The Rock and Shawn Michaels are two of the greatest wrestlers of all time, as they are certainly in a lot of fans' top 10 list. Many would argue that both superstars belong on the Mount Rushmore of the business, thanks to their superstardom and long list of achievements. Shawn Michaels first made his name in the wrestling business in the mid-80s, before becoming a major star with the WWE throughout the mid-90s. Now, we all know what kind of a guy Shawn was at that time. It is well documented by several of his peers about how difficult Shawn was to work with. Rock, on the other hand, he became a star rather quickly upon breaking into the business in 1996 after training with his dad, the legendary Rocky Johnson. After a slow start to his career as Rocky Maivia, Dwayne Johnson found his footing as The Rock and became a pillar of the WWE's Attitude Era. Unfortunately, we fans never got to see these two icons lock up in a one-on-one capacity. They briefly interacted on camera and in the ring only a few times throughout the years. This is odd, considering their superstardom and the fact that both men had illustrious careers. And it wasn't like they never crossed paths like, say, Kurt Angle and Bret Hart. That dream match could never have happened because Bret was in WCW when Kurt started with WWE, and Bret retired from wrestling altogether prior to Kurt hitting his prime. Now, Shawn and Rock, they had several opportunities to cross paths throughout 1996 and 1998, and again from 2002 to 2004, after Shawn returned from a career-ending back injury. But why did the two not work together? It stems from a disdain the two shared for each other. As we know, Rock comes from a lineage of wrestling royalty among the Pacific Islanders, as he is a member of the famed Samoan dynasty. Rock's grandfather was High Chief Peter Maivia, and he is cousins with guys like Roman Reigns and Rikishi, but you all know that already. And as we saw on camera this year in the build to WrestleMania, when Cody Rhodes disrespected The Rock's family, he didn't take kind to it. But what happens when someone disrespects his family behind the scenes? Combine that with acting rude and unprofessional years later when they shared a locker room. Well, that would lead to a lifelong grudge held by the Great One. A grudge so grand that it might have cost us fans a WrestleMania dream match for the ages. Now let's talk about why The Rock doesn't like Shawn Michaels. The Rock made his debut for the WWE at the 1996 Survivor Series as a white meat babyface going by the name Rocky Maivia. The savvy wrestling fans of the mid-90s quickly saw through the good guy act Johnson was portraying, but that didn't take away from what was the obvious. Dwayne Johnson was a star in the making from the day he walked through the doors at WWE. Similar to other wrestlers like Mr. Perfect, Cody Rhodes, and Randy Orton, Johnson had wrestling flowing through his veins. When one has this amount of star power and aura, they can often make enemies though. While most people within the wrestling business like Jim Cornette, Undertaker, Macho Man, and The Godfather praised Johnson for his professionalism and got along great with him, others like Triple H and Shawn Michaels saw him as a threat to their spot. Shawn was already an established guy when Rock made his debut, but Hunter, on the other hand, was on a similar trajectory to stardom as Rock. This led to a natural professional feud over who would gain favor of the boss. But what started out initially as professional quickly became personal between the three. That was when, as Bret Hart put it, Triple H and Shawn bullied The Rock. Now, I don't necessarily think they bullied him in the traditional sense of the word, like they were pulling pranks on him or making fun of him or like things you would normally think when you hear the word bullying. But instead, they tried to throw their weight around backstage to hold Rock down from achieving greatness. This became evident thanks to none other than Bret Hart. The Hitman gave an interview where he discussed a specific instance of Triple H and Shawn trying to hold Rock down. Rock had just won the Intercontinental Championship from Triple H in February of 1997, likely to the chagrin of Triple H, by the way. Then at the end of March, Rock was scheduled to wrestle Bret for the Intercontinental title on Raw. Originally, the finish was supposed to be a disqualification, with Bret getting the win but not becoming champion. Allegedly, according to Bret, Triple H and Shawn went and talked to Vince about the match and was like, come on, Bret is a bigger star than Rock. He should beat Rock for the Intercontinental title. Think about it. And then they're like, oh, you can have the Heartbreak Kid as the WWF champion and Bret as the Intercontinental champion. That'd be great. Bret saw through this and was like, clearly this guy, meaning Shawn, wants to kill two birds with one stone. And what I mean by that is he wanted to end Rock's push and demote Bret to the mid-card all at the same time, thus getting rid of all his enemies. Honestly, a pretty smart move by Shawn. I gotta give it up to him. So Vince changed the finish, and then when he told Bret he was going to win the IC title, Bret was like, nah, hell no. I still got some push around here, so I'm gonna talk to Vince. Bret took Rock under his wing and helped protect him from the sharks that were Triple H and Shawn. Hey, I mean, they're literally running WWE some 30 years later, so they must have done something right regardless. Nevertheless, Bret got the finish switched back to the original DQ. All was right in the world. Another example of Bret's mentorship to a young Rock was when Bret told a story of Shawn lighting Rock up in the locker room after a match over Rock using a drop kick. Apparently Rock did a drop kick during his match, and afterwards Shawn came in and was like, no one uses a drop kick, that's my move. Rock, being a young guy, was probably like, what? I mean, that is Shawn Michaels, he could get in some trouble. And Rock had just walked through the door. I mean, he was a rookie. Supposedly, Bret patted him on the back and was just like, that's okay. He's just trying to mess with you. No one owns the dropkick. Like, that's BS. Don't let it get to your head. People are gonna try to shark you. It's just how the business goes.
Still in the doghouse with those guys. They wanted him as bad as they wanted me out. Like, they were after.
All right, on to the next incident between the two. The Rock and Shawn, they had a run-in, and this was an early edition of SmackDown in 99 or 2000, somewhere along those lines, during which incident, Shawn hit Rock with what was supposedly a stiff sweet chin music. Rock didn't like the kick, so he confronted Shawn about it and was like, what the hell was that? That was a stiff shot, bro. According to Rock's father, Rocky Johnson, in an interview he gave to Hannibal TV, this incident led to a physical altercation between the two after Shawn told Rock to, quote, get out of the business if he didn't like it and couldn't handle a little physicality. Rocky Johnson continues by saying The Rock almost killed the Heartbreak Kid. His words.
His youth as well.
Oh yeah, he almost killed the Heartbreak Kid.
As he knocked Michaels down after the slick remark. Man, 90s Shawn was such a jerk, bro, just running around pilled and coked up causing havoc. Vince Russo was asked about this altercation in an interview, and he said he had never heard of them having any physical interactions like that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did happen. Wrestling legend Conan said on his podcast K100 with Conan that he could see the incident happening based on what he knows about Shawn. Now, there was an incident recalled by Jim Cornette on his podcast, The Jim Cornette Experience. He said that Mark Henry had to restrain Rock from going after HBK. It is unknown exactly what incident he's referring to, whether that was the stiff super kick from Michaels or another incident entirely that has never been reported on. Cornette didn't go into any other details. He did talk in detail about the way Shawn and Triple H treated Rock. He said that he never pitched for Shawn and Rock to work together while he was in creative because he didn't want Rock anywhere near Shawn. He said that if they worked well together, it could be fine. But then he said at the time, no one really worked well with Shawn aside from his buddies. This incident easily could have gone sideways like when Vader worked with Shawn or even Shane Douglas. Cornette was probably right in having the two avoid each other in hindsight. It sounds to me like this is another classic tale of mid-90s Shawn being tough to deal with. But per usual, there is more. According to legend, and this story hasn't really been told in interviews or confirmed by anyone with a high enough profile, but as the story goes, when Rock was a teenager, he was staying out in Hawaii with his grandmother, Leah Mavia, the promoter of Polynesian Pro Wrestling. This was during the territory days, so a number of future stars of the business passed through this territory just trying to make an honest living and establish their name. One of those stars would be Shawn Michaels, who was making the town with his buddy Marty Jannetty. As we know, these two were wild back then. The story goes that Shawn did not treat the lady promoter very well, which angered The Rock and even led to a verbal altercation between the two. Now, Rock was no ordinary teenager, as he would go on to play for the University of Miami football team. And as Jim Cornette says, Shawn Michaels is 0 for life in real fights. So a teenage Rock probably could have beaten Shawn's ass, who knows? We'll never really know what happened, but honestly, I could believe that this did occur. As we know, the Samoan bloodline is something very serious to them. It is no gimmick. The bloodline storyline that we see on TV is just real-life characters turned up to 10. Rock did say in several interviews, one in 2000 and again in 2005, that he did not like Shawn very much and never had any interest in working with him. Of course, Rock did go back on his word at the 2008 Hall of Fame when he said he wished he could have gotten to work with him. Perhaps the two did make up by this time though, because Shawn was seated next to Leah Mavia and had exchanged an embrace with her during the moment. So who really knows what happened? Now, the two were rumored to have a match at WrestleMania 20, which would have been absolutely insane. Honestly, if that match happened at the Garden, man, that WrestleMania would be in top 5 conversations. Of course, if not for the obvious tragedy involving the world champion from that show. Again, no one has confirmed that Shawn and Rock were supposed to wrestle each other at WrestleMania 20, but allegedly it didn't get far enough in the plans because Rock flat out refused to do it as soon as it was pitched. It probably went along the lines of something like this. Vince picks up his phone, calls Rock, and is like, hey, do you want to work with Shawn at WrestleMania? And Rock is like, nah, he disrespected my grandmother, and then tried to bury me when I was just starting out here. So yeah, I'm good. Instead, Rock had a handicap match with Mankind against Evolution in a rather forgettable match on the show. Honestly, I wish the two could have put their differences aside and worked a match together. It would have been amazing. What do you think happened between the two? Do you think Rock held animosity towards Shawn for disrespecting his grandmother, and that's why they never wrestled a match? Or do you think it was just coincidental, and the stars never aligned for them to work? Or was it something else? Was it the way Shawn treated Rock backstage? Or another factor? For what it's worth, Shawn did tell Logan Paul on an episode of Impulsive that he and Rock didn't get along well, but that was because he was a jerk to everyone at the time, and their issues weren't at all what it's been made out to be by fans and the internet. He said he apologized to Rock in 2002 when he came back, and said he loved to work with him, but it just never worked out for the two to have a match. Alright, that'll do it for me. I'll talk to you on the next one.